So at the beginning, the first half of the talk is focused primarily on the role of schools and character development. Basically, the parents are the primary educators of their children. We must respect parents. Schools are to partner with parents. And we expect the schools to teach not only academics, but also to reinforce respectful behavior, and certainly to create a welcoming environment for everyone. Acts of bullying, it's not merely physical or verbal violence. In this day and age, a significant amount of it is cyberbullying, social isolation and the like. I think we are all very familiar with the various traits that typically get picked on: sex, race, ethnicity, mannerisms, gender nonconforming behaviors, socioeconomic status, disabilities, and religion. World Health Organization has estimated that 1 out of 3 children experience it worldwide. What many may not know is that the number one reason children are bullied actually has to do with their weight, with being overweight, obese. And this has been found across the US, Canada, and Europe. There's the obvious, why are we concerned? Anyone with a heart does not want any child to be bullied. And from a medical perspective, it puts not only the student, not only the victim, but also the offender, they're both at risk for increased chance of mental illness. Offenders have a higher likelihood of ending up with a criminal record. But what experts in bullying have realized is that despite having anti-bullying legislation in all states and a whole swath of various programs, it remains a significant problem. And the programs, the curriculum that are out there, the best one really only cuts bullying by 30%. So further studies have found that basically there is a negative school culture, just a general culture in which kids are not respecting one another. So the bullying is just an extreme. You have this basic negative culture, and then at the outliers, the 1 in 3, they are actually being bullied by those stronger than them. The answer, not surprisingly, is to develop a positive culture. And comprehensive character education can do that. It goes beyond just a curriculum. And this was a study, this is a comment by an author who just studied out of Rutgers. The victim and the traits are not the problem. Obviously, cruelty is. So that's the behavior that has to be targeted. And psychologically speaking, the best way to target an unwanted behavior is to focus on its psychological opposite. So you want to instill good character, you want to instill kindness. You want to build a school culture that's going to encourage respect for our shared human dignity. Dr. Thomas Lacona has been considered by many to be the father of modern character education. He founded the Center for the 4th and 5th R's, which stands for Respect and Responsibility, affiliated with SUNY. Not just him, but the center has trained more than 5,000 educators throughout America and over 22 different countries. And he works on developing programs in which schools can partner with parents. The idea is to instill in students both performance character, so working on the habit of doing good, the habit of giving your best job, your best work, and moral character. And they focus on virtues that really no one can disagree with. Performance virtues in class, best effort forward, hard work, persevere, be organized, flexible, and creative, and the moral virtues, kindness, respect, honesty, and so on. Parents are foremost. They must be involved in the process, and obviously it takes the buy-in of staff, students. He also encourages community support, because engaging children in community service is a big piece of the puzzle. The center defines respect as meaning we uphold standards of behavior that honor the human dignity and worth of all. The focus is on what we hold in common, not in the differences. He also draws a distinction between respect does not mean we must agree with each other's beliefs. It's necessary, as we heard from Tyler, we have to be able to have disagreements respectfully. That's part of the academic process. They recommend, and this you can find online, I have it in a later slide, best school practices. And essentially the center offers a tool for assessing the culture of your school, how severe bullying or negativity is at the school. That is shared in turn with parents and staff. The staff support, they must be open to students and approachable. Schools are encouraged to form a mission statement with their students and parents and teachers. A school-wide curriculum can be added. The Olveus curriculum is the best evidence-based curriculum we have. And as I said previously, students are encouraged to have community service as part of their graduation requirement. And service that involves face-to-face helping with people, particularly those less fortunate in the community, have the strongest impact. Peer support, reporting options in the school. Of course, kids are encouraged to approach teachers and staff, but even still, there should be ways for them to report bullying episodes or feeling harassed, threatened, that are anonymous. Democratic style school governments also decrease bullying in the school. Student-run welcome committees for new incoming students. And then Dr. Licona says this about respect for diversity, which very much relates to what we're talking about here. He comments that respect for diversity includes respecting a diversity of worldviews regarding sexuality, which are held as a matter of moral conscience. A public school should respect diversity of convictions by not promoting a single ideological one. It should require and can require respectful behavior rather than so-called correct attitudes. It's not necessary to affirm specific sexual identities or specific sexual behaviors to defend every student's human dignity and their right to learn without fear of harassment. And this comes from their newsletter, Excellence in Ethics, the Smart and Good Schools Education Letter. It was their 2012 edition. So Cortland.edu, Smart and Good Schools, has multiple resources for character education with the idea of bridging or bringing together parents, staff, and school communities. So what's wrong with affirming transgenderism itself in school? Why not? Why would parents, even for non-religious reasons, where's the debate besides religion? Is there a debate? There is a debate. There is. It's wrong to lie. Why would we not actively teach children that they could be trapped in the wrong body? Because that would be a lie. Why would we not promote or affirm what's known as gender dysphoria? Because that could lead to medical treatments that are experimental and potentially dangerous. Transgender belief presumes that every human being has something called a gender identity that may or may not match the sex they were assigned at birth. Again, this does not match science. We're not assigned sex at birth. We'll get into that a little later. Gender dysphoria is real. I'm not minimizing it. There are people who experience significant distress by feeling and having a deep conviction that they are not their biological sex. However, affirming gender dysphoria as being born transgender is dangerous from a social, psychological, and physical perspective. It is a dangerous experiment. Gender. Prior to the 1950s, and still today you can find in common dictionaries that gender means male or female as it relates to sex stereotypes. Grammar may be assigned a gender. In Spanish, if you have a male friend, amigo, you have a female friend, amiga. Things may be assigned a gender. We name hurricanes, Hurricane Gloria, some guys, they name their sports cars. So when did gender first become applied to people? When did it first enter the medical literature? It first entered in 1950s. The 1950s, Dr. John Money and other psychologists who wanted to justify sex reassignment surgery invented the definition that gender was the internal sex identity of a person that could differ from their biological sex. They did not have any science. They wanted to justify the surgeries they were conducting on men at that time. People have a biological sex. It is binary. Reproduction in nature defines the rule. It takes a man and a woman, a sperm and an egg, to create a baby. Sexual reproduction, sex is binary. It's determined at conception by our sex chromosomes. Chromosomes, DNA, that's innate and immutable. Disorders. These are disorders. People are not a disorder, but there are biological disorders. They exist. They don't invalidate the rule. They don't invalidate the binary. Disorders of sex development is the actual medical term for intersex. There are many different kinds. In a very simple way, it's when appearance does not match what you would predict from the sex chromosomes. The best article I have found on this, Dr. Leonard Sachs, it is available on the internet. Dr. Leonard Sachs, How Common is Intersex? And he explains in great detail why this truly is less than 0.02% of the population. It's not, when someone is born with a disorder of sex development, it is not proof of sex being on a spectrum. Again, determined at fertilization, 2 X chromosomes, it's not a marker of a disorder, it's a marker of being female. If you have an XY chromosome, again, it's not a marker of disorder, it's a marker of being male. It cannot be changed, not by social behavior, hormones, surgeries. Sex is not assigned, it declares itself in utero. And it's actually, this says female and male at 12 weeks, but between fertilization and 8 weeks, typically by 8 weeks, in the male, the testes are developed enough that they start secreting testosterone. And that male fetus's testosterone masculinizes beyond the Y chromosome. It masculinizes the entire, every tissue of his body. The same thing does not happen in female fetuses because she's got 2 X chromosomes, no testes. She does not get masculinized she has no endogenous testosterone surge. So at birth, yes, you have a penis, you are a boy, and that was determined from fertilization. So from this perspective, you really cannot get, barring a mother being exposed to synthetic testosterone, I'm not talking about something like that, because people who are claiming a transgender identity, they have normal chromosomes, normal hormones. Every brain cell of a male fetus has an XY chromosome, making it intrinsically different from the brain of a female fetus. And again, only the male fetuses will experience an internal testosterone surge. So what about the trans brain studies? Because we hear about this. Oh, this doctor discovered that the hypothalamus in some transgender adult men, is more like female hypothalamus. Or the functional MRIs of this group of transgenders are somewhere between males and females. What do we make of that? It's a case of correlation does not mean causation. If I wanted to prove that a difference in brain structure might have caused a behavior, if I really scientifically wanted to prove that, I would have to find an infant. You'd have to be looking at brain images from infancy all the way up through adulthood. So prospective means basically from infancy forward. Serial, meaning numerous images, numerous imaging throughout the same person's lifetime. Longitudinal over several years. Randomly sampled, it's got to be a population, a sample population that is representative nationally speaking. There's not one brain study that fits those criteria. So the brain studies do not prove that you're born that way. I forgot to put the, this is a journal article. It's actually available online, and it was very impressive. I'm sorry I don't have the title of it. And it's a research team out of Israel. They found over 6,500 genes that are expressed differently between men and women. So this is outside of the genes found on the Y chromosome, and these are autosomal genes. There are also sex-specific genes, genes found active only in women and genes found active only in men. And there are other genes that are moderately sex-specific, meaning more active in one sex than the other. This sexual binary, because of these genetic differences, is pervasive. Every organ system is impacted. Immune function is one system that is very well recognized, and it's one of the reasons that autoimmune diseases are so much more prevalent in women as compared to men. Similar disease types can present differently and have different outcomes. For example, cardiac disease. This doesn't mean that we're from separate planets. Dr. Leonard Sachs, he's a family physician, psychologist, and education specialist. He's actually a very big proponent of single-sex education because of these differences. But he points out it's not that girls can only do certain things and boys can only do certain other things. It's they get there in different ways oftentimes. So the differences between what the sexes can and can't do are not that great, but the differences in how we get there can be very great. And the failure, this is the irony, the failure to acknowledge sex differences can reinforce damaging sex stereotypes, is what his argument is. Bad, damaging sex stereotypes like boys are bad at art and girls are bad at math and science. So that's his specialty. So what is gender identity? Gender identity can be defined as an awareness of one's biological sex, your thoughts, your feelings, your self-perception. Gender identity exists in the mind. It's, again, thoughts and feelings. Thoughts and feelings are not hardwired. Thinking is that should be obvious, really. Our thinking develops over time and is influenced by our experiences and, yes, also by nature, nurture and nature. And the American Psychological Association actually acknowledges that the majority of experts do believe transgenderism as well as LGBT is due to a combination of nature and nurture. Our thinking could be correct or incorrect when you measure it against reality. It's not like skin color. Skin color is a very simple genetically determined trait. You can't change it. Thinking and feelings are not that way. So how do you get to define what normal thinking is? One function of the brain is to perceive physical reality. So if thoughts align with physical reality, we would say that's normal. Thoughts contrary to physical reality, we would say are abnormal. Fixed false beliefs in psychiatry, typically when you have a